there. All right, we'll go ahead and get started, guys. Again, thank you for joining us tonight. For those of you who've been joining us monthly, Dr. Sue Howell and myself, Dr. Elizabeth Cutright, we've enjoyed sharing some topics that we find interesting, and often there's not enough time in our sessions to share this information, or just more questions come up and just interesting topics. So we've enjoyed hosting these seminars, and we're glad to have you guys here. If you haven't been here before and heard Dr. Howell's story, it's actually rather interesting. She started off in a different profession, but decided to go down the veterinary medicine route when she helped care for Alaskan sled dogs. So she has a really interesting background. I'd love to hear the story. And from there, she just progressed through school, family practice, got some great experience, became the veterinarian for Standard Process. That's how I got to know her. And then decided she wanted more than that and started her own alternative practice. And so she's also practicing nutrition response testing along with various other alternative modalities, but that's where we connect. And so tonight, one of the things we often do when we're working with our nutrition are all the different types of nutrition, from herbs to whole foods. And now tonight we're going to be talking about mushrooms. So without any further ado, here's Dr. Sue Howell with Holy Shiitake, the power of medicinal mushrooms.
Thanks, Dr. Liz. I totally appreciate that really kind introduction. Hey, this is going to be fun tonight. I've been learning so much about medicinal mushrooms, and it's a constant learning process. And for everyone that's on tonight, where you get your pets coming to see Dr. Liz or I, and we're doing muscle testing to check for the affinity for some of these supplements and foods for your pet, I think you'll be able to appreciate that mushrooms may fit really well into programs that you're working on for wellness, and to advance some of the tougher cases that we've been seeing, because mushrooms really are super powerful medicine. And most of my patients are now getting medicinal mushrooms as part of their diet or as a supplement to support them in different ways. So I'm just going to tell you what I'm learning from them through observation and just some really fun facts about mushrooms. We're going to spend maybe about half an hour on this, and please don't think that this is like the end all. We're not going deep into mushrooms. I just want you to understand how much more we need to learn about these amazing fungi, and how much we really share in common with them, which is kind of cool too. So let me advance this slide if I can and see where I'm at here. For whatever reason, I'm not able to advance. Let me just see what's going on. Enter. Okay, first technical problem is in my ability to share the slide. Okay, there we go. So the first thing I want to ask you is if this is a fact or a myth. This is a statement that was made by a veterinary criticalist. And so basically they're saying that while cultivated mushrooms offer many health benefits to humans, they provide little nutrition for canines. So there's really no reason to feed dogs mushrooms. This was on a top Google search that I did on the internet. So is this fact or is this myth? Let me see. Whoopies. Well, of course it's a myth. All right, reishi mushrooms, for example, they have more than 400 different nutrients, and these mushrooms are power-packed with nutrients. You need to look for the medicinal mushrooms, not the bad kind of pathogenic mushrooms that they might find out in the field somewhere. This is why when you go foraging, you really kind of have to know what you're looking for. The medicinal mushrooms include beta-glucans and triterpenoids. They've got all sorts of neat metabolites. Ergothioneine, which converts to vitamin D. There are B vitamins in mushrooms, and there's just a whole host of metabolites that are important. to health. So the first type of mushroom that was really made aware in veterinary medicine was turkey tail. And this is a beautiful picture of turkey tail mushroom. They look like little turkey tails. And this particular article came out in 2012. It was published, and it was the first time that we really saw, I think, giving dogs medicinal mushrooms, that there was a real benefit. The University of Pennsylvania did a study on turkey tail mushrooms and an extract from them called a peptosaccharidopeptide. Polysaccharopeptide. That is a tongue twister. PSP. So what happened was they looked at a bunch of dogs that had hemangiosarcoma, which is kind of a very aggressive form of blood cancer. And they found that dogs taking this PSP extract from turkey tail mushroom had much longer survival times. In fact, longer survival times than those that were treated with chemotherapy. So it was dose dependent, and it was a real exciting study, and it sort of brought turkey tail into the forefront. There was a follow-up study later in closer to 2022 where the results weren't quite as promising. Male dogs did pretty good, but female dogs didn't do as great eating the mushrooms. They found that there was really no correlation between this extract from mushrooms and lifespan, or extending the lifespan of dogs with hemangiosarcoma. I think the flaw of these studies are that they're looking at an extract from mushrooms. They're not really looking at the whole food. So this is just opening the door to more study, because when you only isolate one phytochemical from a mushroom or from a whole food, you're really not seeing everything that it can do. So we're going to talk today about whole mushrooms, not just extracts. And there are a ton of studies in the human line of study on different types of medicinal mushrooms. And these are the concrete findings in hundreds of studies that have been done on mushrooms in people. And they are all supporting these things, that mushrooms will increase longevity, that they can decrease cancer risk, and that's any cancer. They can also help treat certain types of cancers, and they can help people do better on chemotherapy when they're eating mushrooms or taking a mushroom supplement than if they weren't. So they do much better as far as their ability to handle the chemo and the effectiveness of the chemotherapy. These mushrooms are going to decrease viral infections. In fact, there was a wonderful study done on people with COVID-19, and there are also HPV, to show that eating medicinal mushrooms or supplements from medicinal mushrooms, whole mushrooms, will decrease the risk of viral infections. So these are really complex medications. We can see improvements in mental health. We can see improvements in happiness and attitude. So people aren't quite as depressed that eat mushrooms. And we can also see studies that show that you can decrease metabolic syndrome, which would be something like Cushing's disease, that people and animals share. So this is when people were eating mushrooms about 1 pound a week, which is, 3 servings basically a week of mushrooms as food. So why can't we do this with pets? We might as well. I mean, these are the big 5 mushrooms that I love to work with now. You see reishi on the left. That's the longevity mushroom. It's known as a 3-treasure herb, and it's thought by the Chinese to harmonize a patient's life force. It helps the liver and the immune system. You've got Shiitake on the top. It's got a lot of immune supportive beta-glucans in this mushroom in particular. All mushrooms have beta-glucans, which are sort of one of the biggest active ingredients that helps with immune modulation. So you can support the immune system and the heart. Shiitake, which is over on the far right. This is called the forest mushroom because you find them out in the forest. They can improve liver function, decrease inflammation, help with regular heartbeat. We've got cordyceps on the bottom. Chinese herbalists really believe that cordyceps replenishes the body balance and energy. It can be really restorative and help when you're in physical performance, helps regulate stress and exertion, and sports energy, performance, circulation, things like that. And up on the top right, the monkey head mushroom was really lion's mane. Lion's mane is awesome. It's for the brain. Lion's mane for the brain and also for the gut. And you can see it looks kind of like a little brain, which is pretty cool. So those are some of the big 5 mushrooms that we're learning about now in veterinary medicine and in human medicine as well. One thing I'm going to say with your pets is you really want to say no to backyard mushrooms, because there are toxic mushrooms out there. And that's what the vets all understand as a mushroom, is something toxic that your pet's going to eat out in the wild, and it can give them digestive problems, nervous system issues. And you just want to be careful to never let your dogs eat mushrooms that you don't know what they are. But again, we see benefits of medicinal mushrooms, and I'm just going to show you reishi as an example. And we just talked about some of the benefits there of the longevity enhancing properties of reishi. It's anti-cancer, just like all of the mushrooms. It'll help detoxify the system. It's going to help the bone marrow, liver and the kidneys, the heart, and we can even combat antibiotic resistant bacteria like MRSA, for example, with a mushroom supplement or real whole mushrooms. And antibiotics actually work better when their pets are given mushrooms in their diet or as a supplement. So how cool is that? All right, so tips when we're working with mushrooms. I'm going to give you some little tips and tricks along the way, because I am encouraging all my clients to start making mushrooms for their pets, unless they've got a sensitivity to them. Okay, so like if your pet is getting muscle tested and they don't test for a mushroom, then don't give it. That makes sense. Some saliva tests and other blood tests are coming back for some pets where mushrooms are on their no list. So, I think the healthier an animal is, the more they can grab onto a mushroom. But what we want to do is, give these mushrooms in higher amounts for more serious conditions. That's especially true with immune issues, especially cancer. So I'll give you some dosing later. And again, it also depends on what your muscle testing results are for your pet. But reishi in particular, if we're feeding it as a food and medicine, if you're feeding it as a food, it's really bitter. And that's one of the properties of reishi. And the bitters are really good actually for digestion and things like that, but it's not exciting for a pet to eat. It's a little too bitter to the taste. So we like to put reishi in butter for better acceptance. And when I'm working with the immune system and I'm helping a pet detoxify, then milk thistle, if you add that to mushrooms, can really help with the detox process, so we don't get detoxification reactions. We're just getting more sort of a gentle drainage when we're working with detoxing from metals and chemicals and the like. I also like to talk about mushrooms when we are looking at nervous system and comfort support. This is Sasha on the right. She's a dog that I'm going to show you some video of here in a second. But she needed some help with her nerves because she was a bit paralyzed on the front end due to a cervical spinal compression. And lion's mane in particular can help with nerve repair and regeneration. So we're using that a lot, not only for brain function, but for the nervous system in general. And so that's awesome nervous system support. Comfort support can come from mushrooms like reishi, where you can actually build back muscle in muscle-wasted pets. And in some cases, reishi can work as well for discomfort as ibuprofen does, which is pretty spectacular. This is Sasha. she has an interesting story because she started taking lion's mane mushrooms before I saw her, but she was taking a supplement that wasn't really ideal. And we'll talk about later the difference between a mycelium product and a fruiting body mushroom product. But she was taking a mycelium product, and that wasn't really working well for her. She has cervical spinal issues. Presenting complaints were paw knuckling, instability, weakness, neck pain, and it was really progressive. She came to me for acupuncture, actually, and this is what she looked like. You see that right front? That's pretty significantly, she just doesn't have much ability to pick that up and move it. She doesn't know where it is in space. So she's getting some compression on her cervical spine. And we started doing electroacupuncture and some other supplements. She came along, all right. But interestingly, 2 weeks after starting a lion's mane fruiting body supplement, she came walking in the door, and this is what we get with Sasha. Whoopies, shoot. I'm having some problems for you guys with the video. So let's go to this. Look at her pick up that right front. Isn't that cool? I love those videos because Sasha, you can even see in her head carriage on the left, she was just really holding her head low. Her neck really hurt. When she comes in on the right, here she is again. So she's being able to pick up that leg, move around, turn. It's amazing. And I think that is a high, it's just a tribute to what this type of supplement can do, or what this type of mushroom can do as a whole mushroom, either in a supplement or, some people eating them as cooked mushrooms. It's just going to really improve function, especially with the nervous system. Let's get out of that. We can also use mushrooms for tummy troubles and the gut microbiome. And they're going to be anti-inflammatory. They're going to provide support for the anti-inflammatory bacteria in the gut. We talked about this on other webinars and how cool it is that the microbiome can benefit from different foods. And mushrooms are one of the stars of the show here because they're going to decrease bad bacteria and increase healthy anti-inflammatory gut bacteria. They can also help your pet digest their food, which is awesome. They're going to help them bring in more nutrients to their system and to the cells. And they can help with actual general digestion. So you don't have as much gas, you don't have as much reflux, you don't have as much problems with just the breakdown of the meal. In Chinese medicine, mushrooms are used to what we call drain damp. So dampness are things that are moist. Diarrhea would be considered a damp condition, and mushrooms can certainly help with diarrhea. They can help with skin conditions that are moist and oozy. And like we talked earlier, just hitting on beta glucans, that big major metabolite in mushrooms that's immunomodulatory and anti-inflammatory. So when I have my pets that are taking a microbiome replacement therapy, like animal biome gut restore, we talked about this, the fecal microbial transplant. A lot of times I'll have them test for mushrooms, and they will. And so they'll take them along with their gut restore to enhance the rebuilding of the microbiome. Okay, I'm going to go for the next slide. Mushrooms can also be used. Let me just go back. I want to make sure I didn't lose something here. Yep. Okay, good. Mushrooms can also be used for anxious pets. And cordyceps is one of those mushrooms that is kind of a star of the show here because they can act on stress-related pathways in the brain, and it can create a little more mood stability, so they're not quite as anxious. And again, cordyceps can also boost energy and endurance, and it's sort of a treasure in its own self. There's some tips when you use mushrooms for anxiety. A lot of times you're not going to see as much result immediately. And that's especially true if you just give mushrooms alone. They need to have herbs mixed in them or given along with them for best effect. So there are other anti-anxiety herbs, like you could even use enzymes like L-tryptophan, for example, that are going to kind of enhance the activity of the mushroom. But it'll take some time to see results if you use mushrooms to help your pet's anxiety. Though we do see some pets that have results in a couple days. And so there's no reason why you can't give mushrooms to a pet who's anxious. I think it's always worthwhile. And reishi is one of the big benefits here, along with lion's mane. So reishi and lion's mane would be good choices to test for. Okay, we're going on to some fun mushroom facts. So like I said, we're just hitting some of the main points of mushrooms here. I'm not going to give you the end-all lecture and everything mushroom, but I found that these were really interesting. I've been learning from some really great veterinarians and herbalists, whom I will give credit to at the end, because without them, I wouldn't really be learning much about this, and I wouldn't have integrated mushrooms into my muscle testing practice. So first thing, I want you all to know that mushrooms aren't going to cause yeast infections. Fungi, medicinal mushrooms, are actually going to help with yeast infections and with fungal infections. So, just that's a myth. Mushrooms also have different effects on the body. So if you eat a mushroom and your body is needing some extra help with the immune system, it's really going to kick into gear to protect the immune system. And if the level of danger is higher, the level of protection from that mushroom is going to be even higher. It's like they know how to work with the context of the body. Mushrooms are fungi. And one of the other fun facts that's not on here, but I think is amazing, is that we share DNA with mushrooms. About 30% of our DNA is very similar, the same as a mushroom. So that's why, like when you get a pathogenic or a bad fungus, like a nasty fungus, you're going to have a hard time getting rid of it. So when Dr. Liz and I are dealing with yeast and fungi and mold and stuff like that, those are difficult organisms to unload because they have such an affinity for the DNA of the body. But on the upside, the medicinal mushrooms also have a huge affinity. So they know how to work themselves into the cells and break down metabolites and just kind of act as transporters for all the really great healing components of these metabolites. So they're going to help the body adapt to stress. They're going to help them raise the body's level of protection depending upon what's going on in the environment. I love that. The wine industry uses fungi as antibacterial, but also, like we were saying, to detox, to chelate metals, to remove mold and toxins from the wine. So think about what that can do in your pet's body. It's kind of like a cleanup system. The mushrooms will convert sunlight to vitamin D too. So you leave your mushrooms, especially oyster mushrooms, they pick up about 2 times more vitamin D than shiitake mushrooms, for example. If you leave them in the midday sun for 15 minutes to a couple hours, you want to put the gills up on the mushrooms. And if you cut them up smaller, they're going to absorb more D. You just leave them out there in the sunshine, and you can bring them in at that point and store them in the fridge for up to 8 days. And they'll hold all of the D that they've absorbed from the sun. I think too, when we're talking about mushrooms, this is not just your pets, this is for you too, right? So think about it, like eat your mushrooms. I mean, eat a variety of them. That's the other thing, because they all have such interesting characteristics that, the more different varieties you can try and introduce to your pet, the more benefit they're going to have. And if you're a person that's got high cholesterol, for example, oyster and chanterelle mushrooms are natural statins. So instead of, taking your your statin medication, we found that these mushrooms are much more bioavailable to the body than medications when it comes to lowering high cholesterol levels. So eat your mushrooms. That's the lesson here. And cooking mushrooms for your pet can be kind of fun. I did this yesterday. You can see the mushrooms on the left. I've got oyster mushrooms on the far left and shiitake mushrooms. And I can tell you, when I first pulled these out of the refrigerator, my pets came running. I don't know, maybe I cook a lot and they're just like, oh, what is she making now? But they really grooved on the mushrooms to the point where my cat was trying to eat the mushrooms without me cooking them because she was so interested. But it is really important to cook your mushrooms, shiitake especially, because shiitake, if you eat it raw, there's been a skin reaction that can occur, and it isn't very fun, and it's very itchy and painful, and it can last for a couple days. So we just got to be careful to cook these mushrooms. But then when you do, you're going to be able to break down their cell wall and open up all the nutrients, and that's what the body's absorbing from the mushrooms. So we don't want to eat them raw. Okay, even button mushrooms, like some people put button mushrooms on a salad and cut them up raw. It's really much better to lightly cook them for even 5 to 7 minutes. You can't really overcook a mushroom, but you certainly need to cook them in order to get the best nutritional value, the best medicinal benefit from the mushrooms without getting some of the side effects. I cook mine in a little olive oil or butter, and that's going to break down the cell wall to make the nutrients available, like I said. And I always leave on the stem. That thick stem, a lot of us cut that off because it's just tough, but it contains a lot of chitin, which is high in fiber and awesome as a prebiotic for your gut. So it's going to be a benefit if you keep those long stems on there. Mushrooms have a meaty flavor except for reishi, which is bitter, but they have this umami meaty flavor. So cats love them. You can see my little cat Mo, he's on the left here. This was after I'd cooked the mushrooms yesterday. I put them on a plate. He was jonesing to get at them, and I couldn't take the picture quick enough because he was on it. So he's eating his little mixture of shiitake and oyster mushrooms. My older cat Lillian, who's 18, was next to him. You can barely see the plate in her, but she was also having a nice mushroom feast. We like to recommend giving at least one meat-sized mushroom serving a week for your pet. So like, say your dog eats 8 ounces of protein in a meal, then 8 ounces of mushrooms would be a good substitute for that meaty meal once a week. Or you can divide it into like 3 ounces 3 times a week, something like that, just to get the benefit of those mushrooms across. And my dog's over on the right here. This is me giving them mushrooms. Oh yeah, so we're getting a little cranky about that because they like them so much. So those are my dogs Jenny and Rush, and I'll show you again what they do. They love it. You can barely stand it. Don't you love it when your pets love to eat? That's Rush growling on the right, Jenny on the left. Yeah, so it's not hard to get pets to eat their mushrooms. I think you start small and then you try a little bit, and then you can increase it as you go. But just try a little bit, even a teaspoon or more, or teaspoon or so, and that's going to be helpful to just kind of get them into it. When we talk about supplements, pets are going to benefit from mushroom supplements because they're, concentrates of these amazing medicinal mushrooms. But there's differences. Like I mentioned about Sasha, she was eating a mycelium mushroom supplement when I saw her, but when she started eating the fruiting body supplement, it was different. Let me explain to you what that means, because mycelium is what the mushroom basically grows from. So that beautiful mushroom that you see is called the fruiting body. What the mushroom comes out of and grows from is the mycelium. And mycelium is often mixed in with grains. So that's, as a growth medium, but we get oats and we get brown rice in there. And whoopee, sorry, this is glitchy, my bad. And I wanted to see if I could get my cursor. I don't think I'm going to be able to do it. Yeah, here we are. I wanted to be able to expand this for you. On the left is the label from one of the biggest and most popular mushroom supplements, reishi supplements. And I want you to see what it says. It says reishi, and it says it's mycelium. It's fermented on brown rice biomass. So basically, you're not getting a whole ton of the mushroom in there. You're getting an awful lot of brown rice in with this mycelium. So it's not the fruiting body or what you see as a mushroom at all. It's the mycelium and a lot of rice. So number one, it's going to be less mushroom for your punch, but less bang for your buck. And you're also going to get the potential for reactions to the rice. As we know, a lot of our animals have problems with grains like that. So that is a point of caution. If you look at this supplement on the right, you can see they've made a very big point of saying this is a pure mushroom extract. So this is from real mushrooms, which I'll talk about in a second because I love real mushrooms. This is one of the brands that tests well for pets. And because it's much higher in beta glucans, which are those nice immunomodulatory metabolites, we want to be able to know that these mushrooms were sourced well and grown well, and that they're really eating, like it says here, mushroom extract from the fruiting body, not mycelium. So there are no grains or fillers in this particular mushroom supplement. Okay. And we also want to see the sign on the top that says USDA organic. So that's important too. I'm going to try to scooch that back. Great. So on the very right is real mushrooms. I use a lot of 5 defenders, which are kind of those top 5 that we just talked about at the beginning of the talk. A lot of my supplements I test from Third Planet. And actually both of these companies, they source their mushrooms from the same place. So that's, they share that in common, which is cool. Okay, let's see if I can shoosh out of this. Sorry. No. I'm trying to advance this here and it's not going. Oh, come on. Okay, there we are. I wanted to share with you this story about Squirt because in our description of what our webinar was going to be about, Squirt had a story to tell. And this dog is amazing. He came to me with, he was just depressed. He wasn't able to really keep his balance. He had acid reflux. He had muscle tremors. He was unable to compete in the regular, he does nose work. And he was a competitor, but he was sort of not doing very well in his competitions. And he was just really declining. So we changed his food. We had a cooked food diet for him that worked better for his system. And I also have to mention this dog was taking Pepsid twice a day. And that's a bummer because that's going to be a real tough thing on his system long term. So he was diagnosed with canine cognitive disorder and inflammatory bowel disease. He started taking one lion's mane supplement, and from Third Planet, which is one of the companies I just showed you. This is the one thing this dog tested for. He had all sorts of garbage in his system. When I muscle tested him, he had chemicals and heavy metals, and he had a lot of detoxing to do. But interestingly, he didn't test for any of our regular detox products like Spanish black radish or Antranex or Fencho, just none of the normal stuff that we would generally find in parotid. He didn't test for any of that. He tested for this particular mushroom supplement. And it was the only thing that I changed with this dog along with his diet. And he started coming along. Within 2 weeks of changing his diet, his tremors stopped and his GI issues went down significantly. He started his mushroom supplement right around the same time, and it changed his life. Like literally, I wish that Carol were on the webinar tonight, his guardian, because she just raves about this. He was able to do nose work again, and he started winning. I think he got his level 2 nose work accomplishment after we started working with this particular supplement. He now, about a year later, is completely off of his Pepcid AC. You know, he's just doing so well. We're working on some thyroid stuff with him now, that this particular mushroom supplement is something he's not been able to live without. And one of the things that I'll say about lion's mane before we get into the dosing guidelines, I'll go back to Squirt for a second. This is in your slide deck. I lost it somewhere along the way, but lion's mane, it's important when they're eating lion's mane or taking a lion's mane supplement to not stop it. Squirt stopped his lion's mane supplement for a couple weeks and he started to regress. And that's in studies what we see with people is if you take the lion's mane away, their cognitive function starts to decline again. But with the lion's mane supplement, people have major improvements in dementia, Alzheimer's, just cognition and memory. So that's important. You don't want to, once you start taking it and it's helping your pet, don't stop. Just don't stop unless they test off of it. My dad's another good example of a success story with lion's mane. He was affected with COVID and he had some huge brain changes like memory and speech. He started taking Fruiting Body lion's mane supplement, and that man is sharp and he has his memory back and his words. I mean, his speech is not slurred anymore. He really feels a difference with it. He stopped taking it and he started regressing. So I think unless they test off of this supplement for some reason, you know, they need to continue it. And I think that's true with any program we put together for your pets, right? Like, don't stop it unless you're directed to, because, you know, there's some huge benefits to the things we're recommending. So dosing guidelines, of course, it's all on muscle test for Dr. Liz and I, but we look at a range. The first range here was given to me by Dr. Barbara Fugere, who's a veterinary herbalist. So 25 to 100 milligrams per kilogram per day, divided into 2 to 3 doses. The dogs that were taking turkey tail extract, which is called Immunity. If you guys have heard of Immunity, was the extract that was studied. That was at 100 milligrams per kilogram per day on these dogs. You can also dose according to beta glucan content. And these dosing parameters were created by Dr. Robert Silver, who's a veterinarian, and he works with real mushrooms. So mild conditions, lower dosing. If you want calming or if an antihistaminic effect, because reishi can actually help with itch too, which is really cool. You can go a little higher, and then cancer, of course, you know, big immune system issues even more. And we usually start low on the dose and then build them up. So even if your pet tests for a certain amount, a lot of times Dr. Liz and I will like start them at a lower dose than they test for. And you've probably experienced that. So those are the things I have to say about mushrooms. I love them. And I want to thank Lee Carroll, who is master herbalist. He started Third Planet, one of the mushroom supplements I use. He's teaching like crazy on the magic of mushrooms. Dr. Rob Silver, Dr. Barbara Fugera, and my very good friend, Joni Camlet, who is a veterinary technician who's working with all of these people, spreading the good news of mushrooms. So those are just some nice little tips and tricks. Should we start asking questions? Anybody have any questions? I'm going to stop.
Sue, that was great. Thank you. I'm going to give it a few minutes because I've always noticed when I've done the chat, it always takes people a few minutes.
I know. I was hoping it would like be half an hour, but I know I went a little longer. I apologize. There's just so much to say, and you can't just like cram it all into a short period of time.
No, I think that was beautiful, picking your 5 favorites, because I personally, when I started learning about herbs, got a little overwhelmed. So I love when you can do something where it lets people start on a gradient basis and you're giving very actionable steps where it's like, you know, and I loved your examples. I think that those were really good examples. So and maybe it was such a straightforward topic that I think people are going to have to play with it, because I really don't see any questions coming up in the chat.
That's fine.
So,
and I'll just mention that the notes are in the chat. So all of you who are here, just look in the chat, and the notes are there. Okay.
Great.
So you just download them on your computer. Oh, one more quick story about mushrooms. I saw Kitty today. He's got chronic nasal, like just really sinusitis. He was blowing out blood, clots, and just nasty respiratory yuck. He's got fungus up in there. He's got, parasites at one point, but he is doing amazing now. I mean, he's doing a combination of things, and he has had some conventional medicine along with it. But I think the things that have really changed it for him is when we started giving him turkey tail, and he tested really well for that particular mushroom. And if you look through the literature, like turkey tail has been studied in sinus conditions. So that's pretty cool. Like his guardian, she mentioned that I think he started getting a lot better with turkey tail. So yeah.
I think what's great about turkey tail is that it's been embraced by the traditional veterinary group, and because of that, we see a lot more use of it. So we get the opportunity to see even more results. So I have seen some miracles with turkey tail, and often not even at the dose that they recommend. So it's pretty potent stuff.
Yeah,
that's great. I'm getting some thank yous here. Mary Beth,
thank you all. I'm so happy that you were all able to attend, and thank you for putting up with our technical. We're veterinarians, we're not technical people. So this is recorded. We'll post these on our website. And thank you all very much.
Wonderful. Thank you again. I really appreciate you taking the time to put this information together. I know you're busy. So, and I think we'll be doing drainage next month. I have to look at our little sheet.
Yeah, you're speaking next month, so you tell us.
Yes, I'm pretty sure, because that got flipped around with the parasite lecture, but it'll be perfect time. It's coming up on spring. Things start to flow. Water starts to move. Spring, just like our bodies. So that's it. That's all I got for you. But again, thank you, Sue, and thanks everyone for joining us. We know everyone's time is precious, and we really appreciate you letting us share with you. So I hope you guys all have a good night.
Okay. Great. Yeah, thanks.
All right.
Take care. Good night, everyone.